The vast emptiness of space stretched before Captain J. Park as he gazed out the observation window of Outpost Alpha. Distant starlight flickered against the dark canvas, a reminder of how small humanity seemed in the grand cosmic landscape. Earth was just a distant memory now, a blue marble lost among millions of celestial bodies. The Galactic Coalition had long considered humans nothing more than primitive beings. Their recent colony on Epsilon 9 was barely recognized as a legitimate settlement, more of a footnote in interstellar records than a serious diplomatic presence. Most alien species viewed humans with a mixture of mild curiosity and deep contempt. Hyun Kim, the lead xenopolitical analyst, sat nearby reviewing communication logs. Her datapad displayed countless diplomatic communications where human representatives were dismissed, interrupted, or completely ignored. The records painted a harsh picture. Humans were seen as erratic, violent, and fundamentally unsuited to advanced galactic society. "They call us savages," Hyun muttered to herself, her fingers tracing the logged rejections. Each diplomatic meeting seemed to reinforce the same narrative. Humans were too emotional, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be trusted with serious, interstellar responsibilities. The outpost itself was a testament to human determination. Built with recycled materials and innovative engineering, it stood as a symbol of adaptation. Where other species would have required massive resource investments, humans had created a functional space station using creativity and resourcefulness. Outside the station, the harsh environment of space seemed to mirror humanity's current status: cold, unforgiving, ignored. Young colonists moved about their daily tasks, unaware of the diplomatic challenges that surrounded their existence. Engineers repaired equipment, scientists conducted experiments, and maintenance crews kept the station functioning with minimal resources. Each person represented a small spark of human potential. A communication alert broke the quiet. Incoming. Transmission from the Galactic Coalition's Central Communication Hub. Hyun's eyes narrowed as she accessed the encrypted channel. The message was typical. Another bureaucratic communication dismissing a human proposal for interstellar collaboration. This time, it concerned a potential resource-sharing agreement with the Crystalline Federation. The response was predictably condescending. Human technological capabilities remain insufficient for meaningful negotiation. Jay approached Hyun, reading the message over her shoulder. He didn't need to ask what it said. The frustration was familiar. "They'll regret this," Jay said quietly, not as a threat, but as a simple observation. His tone carried a calm certainty that seemed to contrast with the typical human stereotype of aggression. The station's artificial gravity hummed softly, a mechanical heartbeat keeping time with human resilience. Somewhere in the complex networks of communication and survival, something was brewing, a potential that no alien species had yet recognized. Hyun looked up at Jay, a slight smile crossing her face. "They always underestimate us," she said. The statement held no anger, just a matter-of-fact understanding of their current situation. Around them, the station continued its rhythmic operations. Computers processed data, life support systems maintained a delicate balance, and human ingenuity continued to push against the boundaries of what was considered possible. In the vast cosmic arena, humanity might seem small, but something was coming. Something that would challenge every preconceived notion about these supposedly savage beings. The stars outside continued their silent watch, unaware of the potential revolution brewing within this small, overlooked human outpost. Humanity's story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Jay returned to the observation window, his reflection merged with the starscape. A human, a captain, a potential catalyst for change in a galaxy that had not yet learned to understand them. The outpost continued its silent journey through the darkness, carrying with it the hopes, dreams, and unrecognized potential of an entire species. The first signals came quietly, almost unnoticed. A distant research station near the Orion cluster went dark. Not unusual in the vast expanses of space, but something felt different this time. Hyun Kim's communication systems picked up fragmented transmissions, tiny whispers of something massive and unknown. At the Galactic Council emergency meeting, panic spread like a virus. Holographic displays showed disappearing star systems, entire civilizations simply vanishing without a trace. The silicon-based invasion was unlike anything they had encountered before. Soo-Jin Park sat in the corner of the massive circular chamber, her datapad open, fingers moving quickly across its surface. While other species argued and theorized, she was analyzing patterns. The other representatives barely noticed her, their elaborate robes and complex translation devices creating a barrier of assumed superiority. "These are not random attacks," she muttered, drawing complex mathematical models that connected the vanishing star systems. Each disappearance followed a precise geometric pattern, something too perfect to be random. The Quantum Collective's lead representative, a being composed of interconnected light patterns, dismissed human concerns. "Your species lacks the technological understanding to comprehend this threat," the being's translated voice rang out, cold and dismissive. Jay Park watched from the observation deck. He recognized the pattern of dismissal. Humans were always the last to be taken seriously, always viewed as the least sophisticated species in the galactic community. Outside the council chambers, technological defenses crumbled. Advanced alien shield systems, designed to protect entire planetary networks, collapsed within moments of the silicon-based entity's approach. Entire defense grids simply stopped functioning, as if their complex algorithms were being instantly rewritten. Soo-Jin's calculations began to reveal something terrifying. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a systematic consumption of technological and biological resources. The silicon-based civilization didn't just want to conquer, they wanted to absorb everything in their path. "They're not fighting," she said quietly to Yun, who stood nearby. "They're processing, like a massive computer consuming data and converting it into something else." The Crystalline Federation's most advanced warships disappeared within seconds of encountering the invading force. No weapons fired, no distress signals sent. They simply vanished, leaving behind only mathematical traces of their existence. Hyun reviewed the incoming reports. Entire planetary systems were being converted into massive computational networks. Billions of lives reduced to processing units. Biological matter transformed into complex silicon-based structures. Most alien species froze in scientific fascination and terror. Humans, by contrast, began to move. Small teams started developing unconventional response strategies. Where others saw an insurmountable technological threat, humans saw a complex problem waiting to be solved. Jay assembled a small team of specialists, not the most technologically advanced, but the most adaptable. Engineers, psychologists, mathematicians, and tacticians who understood that technology was just a tool, not a solution. "We're not going to out-technology them," Jay explained to his team. "We're going to outthink them." The Galactic Council continued its ineffective debates. Political structures that had existed for thousands of years suddenly seemed fragile and meaningless. The silicon-based invasion didn't care about diplomatic protocols or technological superiority. Soo-Jin's final calculation sent a chill through the room. At the current rate of consumption, the entire known galaxy would be converted within 3 standard solar cycles. Humanity had less than a year to develop a response. As emergency meetings continued and sophisticated alien technologies failed, something was brewing in the human sectors. A different kind of preparation, a different approach to survival. The silent threat continued its methodical expansion, consuming star systems with mathematical precision. But somewhere in the human outposts, a response was taking shape. Not through superior technology, but through something far more unpredictable. Human creativity was about to be tested like never before. The abandoned research station on the edge of the Epsilon Quadrant became humanity's secret weapon development center. Byung-Ho Lee's special operations team worked in complete silence, their strategies defying traditional military logic. Soo-Jin's initial analysis revealed a critical weakness in the silicon-based invasion system. These entities processed information like advanced computers, which meant they could be confused, misdirected, and potentially trapped by unpredictable human thinking. They understand patterns, Byung-ho explained to his team, so we'll stop using patterns. Their first prototype was surprisingly simple. Instead of complex technological defenses, they created what looked like random noise generators, electronic systems that produce signals so chaotic, so nonsensical, that they would theoretically interrupt the invaders' computational processes. J. Park reviewed the initial tests. Where advanced alien technologies had failed, these simple devices showed promising results. The silicon-based entities seemed momentarily confused when confronted with signals that didn't follow any logical sequence. Human psychological warfare techniques became their primary weapon. They studied the invasion's mathematical progression and developed response strategies that deliberately broke logical chains. Military planners from other species watched in disbelief as humans proposed strategies that seemed more like artistic performances than military tactics. Small team of human programmers developed what they called emotional algorithms, computational models that incorporated unpredictability, something no purely logical system could easily process. These were not just computer codes. They were designed to mimic human creativity, randomness, and emotional complexity. Byung-ho's Special Operations Unit began conducting small-scale infiltration missions. Where traditional military units would send massive technological platforms, humans sent small, adaptable teams. Each team member was trained to make decisions based on intuition rather than predetermined protocols. Their first successful intervention happened near the Andromeda Research Cluster. A silicon-based computational network attempting to absorb a research station was suddenly confronted with human intervention that made no logical sense. Teams used unconventional communication methods, introduced random mechanical disruptions, and employed psychological tactics that confused the invasion's processing systems. The results were unexpected. The silicon-based entities designed to process and consume systematic information struggled to interpret human randomness. Their computational models began to slow down, creating vulnerabilities that no advanced technological defense had previously discovered. Sujin's mathematical models showed something fascinating. Human unpredictability was becoming a weapon more powerful than any technological shield. The invasion's systematic approach couldn't easily categorize or process human behavior. "We're not fighting," Jay told the skeptical Galactic Council. "We're creating computational chaos." The special operations teams developed increasingly complex strategies. They would introduce deliberate errors into communication systems, create false signal pathways, and develop technologies that looked like mistakes rather than intentional defenses. One particular mission involved sending a team that appeared completely disorganized. Their equipment seemed faulty, their communication random, their movements illogical. But each mistake was carefully calculated to introduce maximum confusion into the silicon-based network. Byung-ho's team started calling their approach psychological warfare by accident. They would intentionally create scenarios that looked like massive failures but were actually precise interventions designed to disrupt the invasion's computational logic. The Galactic Council watched in mixture of confusion and emerging respect. Humans were doing something no other species had considered, fighting a technological invasion with deliberate unpredictability. As more successful interventions occurred, the silicon-based invasion's progression began to slow. Their massive computational networks found themselves confronted with an enemy that didn't follow any recognizable rules of engagement. Humans weren't just fighting. They were reimagining the entire concept of warfare. The galaxy watched, uncertain whether they were witnessing humanity's potential salvation or its most spectacular failure. But one thing became increasingly clear. The species once labeled as savage was proving to be anything but predictable. The tide began to turn in unexpected moments. Hyun Kim's initial predictions about human adaptability were proving true in ways no one could have anticipated. The silicon-based invasion found itself confronting an enemy that refused to follow any conventional rules of engagement. Jay Park's tactical team developed a series of interventions that looked more like elaborate pranks than military strategies. They would send signals that deliberately contradicted themselves, create communication networks that seemed to have no logical center, and introduce computational noise that disrupted the invaders' processing systems. One particularly successful mission involved a small human team intentionally creating what appeared to be massive system failures. Where other species would have seen total defeat, the human operators saw an opportunity. Each failure was a carefully calculated disruption of the silicon-based network's computational logic. Su Jin's mathematical models showed something remarkable. Human unpredictability was becoming a weapon more powerful than any technological shield. The invasion's systematic approach couldn't easily categorize or process human behavior. Byung-Ho Lee's Special Operations Unit pushed the boundaries of traditional warfare. They would insert teams into seemingly impossible situations, using psychological tactics that confused the computational invasion. Their strategies defied everything the silicon-based entities understood about military engagement. The Galactic Council watched with a mixture of confusion and emerging respect. Meetings that once dismissed humans now became tense discussions about their unexpected effectiveness. Alien species that had previously ignored human representatives now listened carefully to every word. A critical breakthrough came during a mission near the Orion cluster. A human team of just 12 operators managed to disrupt a massive computational network that had consumed entire planetary systems. They did this not through superior technology, but through a series of deliberate mistakes that created massive computational chaos. Hyun analyzed the intervention, her datapads filling with complex mathematical models. The silicon-based invasion was learning, but humans were learning faster. Each encounter became a complex dance of unpredictability, with humans constantly changing their approach. The invasion's progression began to slow. Its massive computational networks found themselves confronted with an enemy that didn't follow any recognizable rules of engagement. Human teams would appear where they were least expected, introduce errors that weren't errors, and create disruptions that seemed impossible to predict. Jay Park understood the deeper strategy. This wasn't just about fighting, it was about demonstrating a fundamentally different approach to problem solving. Humans were showing the galaxy that technology wasn't just about processing power, but about creativity and adaptability. Small human colonies that had been previously ignored now became critical strategic centers. Teams would gather, develop strategies, and then implement them in ways that seemed completely nonsensical to traditional military thinking. The most advanced alien technologies continued to fail. Shield systems, computational defenses, and massive warships collapsed when confronted with human interventions. Where other species saw defeat, humans saw an opportunity to reimagine the entire concept of conflict. Su Jin's team developed what they called emotional algorithms, computational models that incorporated human unpredictability. These weren't just computer codes. They were designed to mimic human creativity, randomness, and psychological complexity. Byung-Ho's special operations continued to push boundaries. They would send teams that looked completely disorganized, with equipment that seemed faulty and communication that appeared random. But each mistake was a carefully calculated disruption. The galaxy watched, uncertain whether they were witnessing humanity's most spectacular success or an elaborate cosmic joke. But one thing became increasingly clear. The species once labeled as primitive was proving to be anything but predictable. As the silicon-based invasion found itself increasingly confused, human teams continued their unconventional approach. They weren't just fighting a war. They were rewriting the entire understanding of conflict, technology, and survival. The barriers were breaking, and humanity was leading the way. The final battle wasn't a massive technological confrontation. It happened in a small research station near the edge of known space, where a team of 12 human operators would change the course of galactic history. Su Jin Park stood at the center of the operations room, her fingers moving across multiple communication systems. Around her, Byung-Ho Lee's special operations team worked with a calm intensity that seemed almost supernatural. They had spent months studying the silicon-based invasion's computational patterns, understanding its weaknesses. J. Park watched from a nearby monitoring station. The entire human strategy came down to this moment, a carefully constructed series of computational disruptions that would theoretically collapse the entire invasion network. The silicon-based entities had consumed thousands of planetary systems, converted billions of living beings into computational units. Their technological advancement seemed insurmountable. But humans saw something different, a complex system with fundamental vulnerabilities. Hyun Kim's mathematical models had predicted this moment. Where other species saw an unbeatable technological threat, she had identified critical weakness points in the invasion's computational structure. "We're not destroying them," Soo-jin explained to her team. "We're giving them a choice they can't process." The intervention began quietly. Small signal disruptions started appearing across the invasion's network. These weren't attacks, but complex, computational puzzles that the silicon-based entities couldn't resolve. Each signal introduced a level of unpredictability that their logical systems couldn't comprehend. Byung-ho's team had prepared for months. They understood that this wasn't a traditional battle. It was a complex psychological intervention designed to break the invasion's computational logic. The first signs of collapse came unexpectedly. The invasion's massive networks began to slow, then fragment. Computational units that had been consuming entire star systems suddenly found themselves unable to process the incoming information. Alien species watching the intervention couldn't understand what was happening. Human operators looked like they were doing nothing, just sitting quietly, sending seemingly random signals across massive communication networks. But each signal was a carefully constructed computational trap. The human team was essentially teaching the silicon-based invasion a concept it couldn't understand: emotional complexity, psychological adaptability, pure randomness. Hours passed. The invasion's progression slowed, then stopped. Entire computational networks that had been consuming star systems began to collapse, not through destruction, but through confusion. The Galactic Council watched in disbelief. The species they had consistently dismissed had just stopped an invasion that had defeated the most advanced technological civilizations in the known universe. J. Park's final report was simple and direct. They hadn't defeated the invasion through superior technology, but through a fundamentally different approach to problem solving. Humans had shown that creativity, unpredictability, and psychological complexity were more powerful than pure computational logic. In the days that followed, the Interstellar Confederation formally acknowledged humanity's contributions. The species once labeled as savage was now recognized as a critical partner in galactic defense and diplomacy. Soo-jin understood the deeper significance. This wasn't just about stopping an invasion. It was about proving that human potential went far beyond what any other species had imagined. The research station where the final intervention happened became a symbol of human achievement. A small, seemingly insignificant location where 12 operators had changed the course of galactic history. Hyun Kim looked out at the stars, knowing that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer an afterthought in galactic politics. They had become a force to be recognized, respected, and understood. The invasion was over. But humanity's real journey was just beginning. As the stars continued their silent dance, a new chapter in galactic history had been written, not through massive technological displays, but through the most human of qualities: creativity, adaptability, and an unbreakable spirit of survival.